And it's a republic if you can keep it. And that's the theme I want to use for this conversation with Rick Esenberg, because Rick, it is about choosing to keep this republic or not. And right now, people are going to be choosing, whether they know it or not, to reject the concept of representative government and ordered liberty or keep it. That is the governor's race. That is the race for many, many seats, open seats in Congress, because you have now a party that has decided it hates the concept of a republic. So let's start there.
Well, everybody quotes Ronald Reagan, who is, he warned us that liberty doesn't reside in the blood, right? It's something that each generation has to claim and maintain for itself. And, on the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, it was a great time, and still is a great time, to contemplate what we've been given. Like, the United States is really the oldest and most successful multicultural democracy in the world. It is astonishingly prosperous and free. Now, to be sure, we can find things that we would like to improve, that we think could have been better. But the overall picture is that there really is no other place in the history of the world, from the beginning of humankind until now, that you'd want to be born like here. And so we need to keep that. And one of the reasons that we have what we have is the United States Constitution. It was a product of the American Revolution, but it isn't really revolutionary. It's something that creates a democracy, but it places limits on the government. And it places limits on the government so that every election isn't existential, where, oh my gosh, if we lose this election, we lose the country, because we operate within a very narrow set of parameters. And what this move for socialism does is it asks for a dramatic change in the country, one that really runs contrary in many ways to the wonderful things that we've had over the last 250 years. And so it's important in resisting this move towards socialism to keep in mind the wonderful gift that we've inherited in the United States of America, and how we have, and what it is that makes it so great. The rule of law, limited government, civil society, the idea that the government doesn't make our lives, we make our lives. And, there are ways in which socialism runs contrary to every one of those things. And it is a path that, tempting. It comes up from time and time again. It was big back when I was a teenager in the late 60s and early 70s. It's never a good idea. And it has never worked anywhere.
It has never worked anywhere. So, we're talking, if you want to have just the body count on the pile of for socialism, it's over 100 million people if you include China and Russia and all of the socialist countries. It's massive body count you're talking about. So it kills people too. It creates scarcity, all kinds of things. And we should teach this. We don't teach this. But when you look at the DSA, what they're taking advantage of is modern technology. And that's something that I think is giving this, it's making me fear this maybe more than our parents feared the communist invasion. They were more, fearing bombs and boots on the ground, and fur caps and boots on the ground. People are passively consuming this in their social media feeds. It's being reinforced in K-12 public education. It's being reinforced in university education. It's being reinforced in law school education, where the rule of law itself is kind of being untaught in some of the bigger law schools. And when you put all of these sort of amplification institutions and mechanisms together, that's what's making this scary, is that we could wake up and not realize that there was a really successful propaganda campaign that that made the existential election go the wrong way. And then what do you do?
Yeah, social media rewards oversimplification and drama, right? Big claims, right? The measured discourse that's nuanced and takes into account, everything that needs to be taken into account in making a decision, which is what our founders contemplated. It's why they created a constitution with divided branches of government and a lot of decision-making points, because, they were really aiming for deliberative democracy. There's nothing deliberative about social media. That's one problem. The second problem that you touched on is that we have somehow produced an elite in this country. And I have to tell you, I don't like a lot of this railing against baby boomers, being one myself. But it really does go back to us. What the left calls this long march through the institutions. We have elites who think that it's sophisticated to hate this country, or maybe not hate it, but be reluctant to celebrate it. And I think these are the two things that we have to move on. We have to be less online, and we have to have a broader perspective about the wonderful gift that we've been given in the United States of America, and our responsibility to maintain it, to not get caught up in the exigencies of the moment and forget those institutions that the founders established for us and have been so important and are part of why our Constitution is still here almost 250 years later. That is a very, very rare occurrence.
Well, when you look at American adults, let's say American adults over the age of 30, most of them would fail a basic civics test. I think the average score is something like 36%. Most American adults could not name the three branches of government. So that's part of the problem. And I will say, as I was listening to you talk, back in the 1970s, 1980s, when I was in school, I'm Gen X, so can't really exempt myself either, because we were also part of the march through the institutions. I had my teachers back then telling me that patriotism was anti-intellectual. In fact, I was almost explicitly told that as a senior in high school, that patriotism, my country, right or wrong, is anti-intellectual. And so you want to have the accolades from the smart people, right? It's been going on for a long time. But here was what we had that was different. We had messages, whether it was press messages, entertainment messages, that shored up our belief that whatever the faults we had, we were a country capable of fixing our problems, and we were a heck of a lot better than the country that was dividing Europe with a wall and creating a miserable starvation culture calling it communist utopia. We had that. We don't have that anymore. We just don't have that anymore. So all the indoctrination I was experiencing in the 80s in college could be undone because there were alternative messages in the free marketplace of ideas.
Well, those messages are out there. I don't disagree with you that there are reasons to be very, very concerned, and that there's a lot of work to be done. On the other hand, let me give you one example. You mentioned law schools, and to some extent, generally in terms of what the direction of law schools have been, not for the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, really in the whole post-war period, has been basically a rebellion against the very idea of law. Right? When I was trained, and I graduated from law school in 1981, what I was told is that law is about power. There are only three kinds of legal arguments, my torts professor said, and you can make them on each side of every question. This is all about the exercise of power. Originalism wasn't a thing. Natural law wasn't a thing. Textualism wasn't a thing. If people brought them up, they were things to be ridiculed. That is still probably the majority opinion in American law schools, but it's now not the only opinion, right? Because the Federalist Society, there's been a pushback against that. And the outcome of that in the real world is the current Supreme Court. And we can argue about this decision, that decision, and whether we liked how this justice went or that justice went, But the fact of the matter is, this is probably the strongest court for constitutional conservatives in, I don't know, decades, and maybe 100 years, maybe more. And that is a product of the hard work that a lot of people who we've never heard of did. And that work can be done in so many parts of our lives. And as Ronald Reagan said, it's for us to be about it. Right? It's not going to happen automatically. It's not in the blood. We've been given this gift of liberty, and we are the ones that, have to preserve it. And that's why we call our podcast If You Can Keep It.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you just made there. I really do. It's also in the theme of kind of just accepting what's in front of you and not realizing that it's better than what was behind you. So the idea of gratitude for this, because you are right about that, where we have people making originalist arguments. In fact, the Slaughter case, this was one that we could just pick apart that one case. But giving the executive the authority to fire, quote, independent agency heads, that was something 25, 30 years ago. And of course, we're not going to do that. The president can't fire those people. No. And you don't realize that decision was pretty radical by this court. It was an aggressive blow against the deep state we've been griping about. So, yeah, it does. We need to move faster. I think social media, I think the changing media landscape is something we didn't expect. And so maybe it knocked us back on our heels a bit. But boy, we were on a roll in the Tea Party days, Rick. And it seems to me we could be again.
Yeah, well, the Slaughter decision went back to the rule of the Myers decision, which was in 1926. So we went back to the future. It was the right decision. I would only add that it's only half the battle in reining in the administrative state and restoring the power of the legislative branch. The next thing we need is the non-delegation doctrine.
Yep.
And there is some move towards that in the court's use of the major questions doctrine, but that's probably a topic for another day.
Yeah, we'll leave that one on the table. There will never not be a fight to have. And I hate to quote an actor, but Matthew McConaughey did a marvelous 3-minute monologue. My buddy called him Hipster Uncle Sam, where he said, America is never the game that's won. It's the game that's always played. Something to that effect. All the bets are still on the table. No one's gonna, take the cards off the table. And so look at it not as the end, but, the process that is supposed to protect us in perpetuity as a nation from tyranny. So I do appreciate the podcast. You guys, it's a great podcast. Anybody could learn a ton from the If You Can Keep It podcast. So thanks very much for jumping on, Rick.
Thanks, Vicki. You take care.
I'm going to call you Professor Esenberg from now on. We'll take a break on the Vicki McKenna Show, and I'll be right back.